21.8 million. This is the number of U.S. veterans as of 2014, or 6.8 of the total U.S. population. From the Korean War, Vietnam War, Desert Storm 1 and 2, to the conflicts in Iraq, many of us know someone who has served in the military at some point in their life. Coming home from war, veterans face the difficult position of having to adjust back to normal civilian life while coping with the past. In order to help with the process, the government set up the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs in 1930. The VA has three main sections: the Veterans Health Administration, the Veterans Benefit Administration, and National Cemetery Administration. The Veterans Health Administration is responsible for providing health care for veterans as well as regional health centers. The Veterans Benefit Administration provides benefits such as a home loan guarantee, insurance, vocational rehabilitation, and employment, as well as education and a pension. Despite the services that the VA provides for veterans, they still face crippling issues that prevent them from adjusting completely back into civilian life. As a result, a major question that the U.S. and society faces today is, are we providing enough money and resources for our veterans as they adjust back into civilian life? To start, let's look at some of the major issues that veterans are facing today. Perhaps the biggest issue that many veterans have to deal with is PTSD and other mental health issues such as traumatic brain disorders. PTSD continues to be a major issue in returning soldiers despite the care that VA provides. According to the National Library of Medicine, 31% of Vietnam veterans, 10% of Gulf War veterans, and 11% of Afghanistan veterans suffer from PTSD. From 2002 until 2012, 103,792 troops were diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. It is not only deployed troops that seem to suffer from PTSD. 23,000 soldiers who aren't even deployed have been diagnosed with PTSD. PTSD can range from being mild and treatable to severe, making it hard to interact in normal society and hold a steady job. As a result, the VA provides health services and medical care to help cope with PTSD. But it may not be enough, as 76.3% of veterans with a VA service-connected disability rating believe that there's a disability is currently preventing them from getting a job. The VA spent $5 billion on mental health services alone in 2011, so the issue begs not if we're spending enough, but maybe if we're spending effectively. Homelessness is another major issue concerning veterans despite employment and educational services provided by the VA. According to End Homelessness Now, as of 2014, there are 49,993 confirmed homeless veterans. This is 8.6% of the total homeless population. Alarmingly, homeless veterans are getting increasingly younger, there's a growing number of females, and there are more head of households. The majority of homeless veterans are between the age of 51 and 64 and served during the Vietnam War, but it is projected that the number of veterans under the age of 55 will increase drastically over the upcoming years. There are a couple reasons why veterans are so high risk for homelessness. The first is due to their military service. Veterans are at higher risk of experiencing traumatic brain injuries and PTSD. Sexual trauma, especially among the increasing number of female veterans, has also been a growing issue. Also, due to the nature of combat, veterans often have a hard time readjusting back into normal civilian life, as some may not have skills that are easily transferable from outside military life. Currently, the VA uses a program called the Supportive Service for Veteran Families to try to prevent veteran homelessness and rapidly rehouse veterans that fall into homelessness. They provide time-limited services and financial assistance to help veterans find housing. Through this program, only 15% fall back into homelessness, according to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, within the next 2 years. There is also a program run jointly between the VA and the Department for Housing and Urban Development called HUD-VASH, which gives veterans housing vouchers and case management services. The result has been a 67.4% decrease in homelessness since 2009, but it still may not be enough. Perhaps the most pressing and talked about issue in the media today is the high suicide rate among veterans. According to the PBS program Coming Back with Wes Moore, 22 veterans commit suicide every day. This amounts to 8,030 suicides every year, or a veteran suicide every 65 minutes. And the numbers may even be more than this. Veterans make up 1 in every 5 suicides in the United States, despite making up only 10% of the population. 31% of these suicides are veterans 49 or younger. On average, there are around 1,000 attempts by veterans to take their own lives every month. In order to combat this, the Veterans Crisis Line was launched in 2007 as a suicide prevention and help hotline for veterans. Between 2007 and 2012, the Veterans Crisis Hotline has answered 890,000 calls and launched 30,000 rescue missions. Even so, more veterans die from suicide every year than the amount of soldiers that have died in combat since 2000 combined. Although this may seem like a fairly one-sided issue, the government also has a massive stake in this, as it has to provide hefty amounts of resources to combat veterans' issues. The major issue that the U.S. government faces is the massive costs associated with providing veterans with benefits through the VA. The VA is one of the 15 cabinet-level departments in the federal government, making it one of the highest-ranking departments in the country. This also means that it has one of the biggest budgets. In 2016, the Department for Veterans Affairs budget was $166 billion. In 2017, the proposed budget is $186 billion. Compare this to the 2009 budget of $89 billion. Also compare this to the $98 billion allotted for the Department of Transportation and the $42.1 billion for the Department of Homeland Security. Money is going into this issue in vast amounts, so although many people have called for increased spending in veterans issues, this may not be the problem. The more pressing problem may be that the money isn't being used effectively, with some pointing to a flaw in the structure of the program rather than the money itself. According to the Cato Institute tax expert Chris Edwards, the bigger the organization, the harder it is to manage. The bigger the federal agencies get, the more impossible it is to let policymakers manage them. The Washington Examiner states that on average, the percentage of waste for the top 5 spending agencies is 6 times greater than the waste for the bottom 5 spending agencies. Keeping this in mind, an increase in spending will most likely lead to more waste, so throwing more money into the VA doesn't mean that it will be used effectively. The bigger concern for the VA is looking at the current structure to see if it's providing the most efficient service that it can, considering the vast amount of resources at its disposal. Overall, with abnormally high PTSD, homelessness, and suicide rates, veteran issues continue to be a pressing problem that the U.S. needs to address, but as the allocated budget towards the problem shows, the amount of money may not be the problem. This means that there continues to be issues around providing proper assistance that veterans need in order to adjust back into normal society. There is no easy answer to this problem, and as we continue to pull soldiers from the Middle East and with the rising ISIS problem, the issue will continue to increase.